a turning point for the Muslims because the Prophet ﷺ gave the command to a small group of companions to go and stop the caravan of Abu Sufyan that had the belongings of the Muslims from Mecca. Now obviously Abu Sufyan at the time was not Muslim. So the companions left. There was no intentions to fight necessarily. They just wanted to get their belongings and come back to Medina. Somehow the news got to Abu Sufyan that the Muslims are about to take their stuff from the caravan. So he orders the caravan to change route and they make it safely back to Mecca. When you go to Mecca, the leaders of Quraysh were like, how dare the Muslims think that they can just come stop our caravan? So they put a huge army together of 1,000, they go attack the Muslims very closer to Medina. Now obviously, as most of you know, the battle takes place. The Muslims win this battle, 313 against 1,000, a huge turning point. Now I want you to put yourself in the place of the companions. The companions just went through a huge battle, a huge victory. The first thing they asked the Prophet ﷺ, the first thing, so O Messenger of Allah, what are we going to do with the spoils of war? What are we going to do with the spoils of war? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the surah, Surah Al-Anfal. Every Tuesday, inshallah, we're going to take a part of Surah Al-Anfal. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts Surah Al-Anfal. Anfal means spoils of war. Which the name of the surah is Al-Anfal, meaning the spoils of war. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the surah by telling the Prophet and telling us, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنفَالِ قُلِ الْأَنفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. O Muhammad, they ask you about the spoils of war. The first thing to the companions' mind, what are we going to do with the spoils of war? Allah says, them have fear of Allah. Have fear of Allah. Because the spoils of war will be disposed by Allah and His Messenger. It's not your concern. What's beautiful is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers their question, but in verse 41 actually. 40 verses later, Allah gives the directions and the guidance of how to distribute the spoils of war. Now, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about in these 40 verses? Because a lot of times when the companions ask the questions to the Prophet, Allah reveals the answer immediately. Right? But in here, Allah taught the companions a lot of things in those 40 verses. Obviously, we cannot do it Yom Fajr, but the answer, we'll talk about it in the last Tuesday of Ramadan, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to make it there. But the first thing I just wanted to discuss with you today, inshallah ta'ala, is that what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught the companions at the very beginning? A couple of things. Now somebody might say, well, what does this have to do with me? We're not in battles. But each one of us, each single one of us, young and old, have little victories in life. Like getting married. It's a huge victory. Or finishing a PhD. Or getting a dream job. Or waiting so long to have children and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with children. Or starting your own business. Or buying a house or whatever. Each one of us go through some sort of smaller victories. We have our own little battle of Badr. What happens when we achieve these things? What do? A lot of times we're like, hey man, I worked really hard for that PhD, alhamdulillah, I got it. So a lot of people that work hard for PhDs, they don't get it. Right? Oh man, alhamdulillah, Allah blessed me with children because I'm righteous, I come to Fajr. There's a lot of people that come to Fajr, Allah doesn't bless them with children. You see the point here? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the very beginning, He tells them, first fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then He says, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Make sure that you obey Allah and His Messenger. This is a huge deal because maybe some of them felt that they are deserving of more spoils than others. Because there's the people of Medina that sacrificed a lot of things. There were people that came from Mecca, migrated with the Prophet. There were some early Muslims, there were some late Muslims. There were a whole different variety of believers at the Battle of Badr that took the battle with the Prophet. So maybe some of them felt, more deserving of some than the others. Allah says, obey Allah and His Messenger. Because whatever the distribution it will be, make sure you obey Allah and His Messenger. And then He tells them, go back to the basic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse, He says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. You want to know what true believers are? إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Because that's what the concern with the companions are. They didn't necessarily, they didn't ask this question because of any evil reasons. They're just curious. Allah says, here's what true believers are. الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. When Allah is remembered, their faces and their hearts are trembling. Their hearts are fearful when Allah is remembered. So look at it. In the battlefield, the battles are not the most spiritual thing. Right? It's a very tough place. So it could make the heart really rough. So Allah says true believers are when the Quran is remembered, their hearts are trembled. وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. When the verses of the Quran are recited, increases them in their faith. Because a lot of the time, what happens, my dear brothers, is that when we are given certain blessings in life, they distract us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many of us get their dream job, but I'm like, oh man, I can't make it to Jum'ah. Because I have this important meeting. Right? Or I make the Jum'ah just by the prayer time. Right? How many of us are blessed with children, and now they're keeping us busy? We have responsibilities, obviously. We have responsibilities towards them. But the idea here is that every blessing that we get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be a reason to get us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to say, وَالْخَيْرُ كُلُّهُ بِيَدَيْكَ. Oh Allah, all goodness belongs to you, Ya Allah. All goodness. It's not me. It's not us. Wallahi, one of the things Shaykh Hatim used to tell us all the time, and I'll end with this inshallah, is that there's a lot of people that do the same thing we do. They come to the masjid, they're very righteous, right? They work really hard, but they don't get the blessings that we have. And subhanAllah, just not very long ago, we all experienced what happened in Turkey and in Syria. There's a lot of successful Muslims, there are a lot of righteous Muslims. Overnight, their life changed upside down. May Allah protect all of us and our families. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the companions here, is that true belief is your heart. You want to be true believers? Check your heart. And second thing, you do actions. Because the next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those are people that establish their salah, and from what we give them, from the blessings that we give them, they spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many of us get this really beautiful job, and the first thing we think about, oh man, I'm going to save for a house. Right? I think we should think about, I should save for Hajj, maybe. Right? Or I should take my family to Umrah. Or I should take my dad, who's very old, I should take him to Umrah or Hajj. Right? Like the perspective that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching the companions. Don't be so distracted by the spoils. Because keeping in mind, they were an army that was 3 times the size of the Muslims. So there were a lot of spoils. And a third of the Muslim army were people of Medina that were farmers and village folks. They weren't even soldiers. So to them, these spoils are like a lifeline of treasures. Allah says, don't be distracted. And then the last thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا. Those are the true believers. Those are the true believers. Don't distract it by the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And again, all of us have our little battles, our little victories in life that we go through. We want to make sure we ask ourselves, are these victories getting us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or are they distracting us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, guide all of us subhanahu wa ta'ala. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.